to me, like freedom's probably more important, right? Like, and money is just a tool to get me freedom.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Biz Dad podcast. Today, I have Monish Khadye on the podcast. Looking forward to chatting with him about his business and being a dad and kind of all of his travels. He's getting ready to do some travel over to America. You'll hear from his accent that he is not from America, but we'll get into some of that and kind of have some chats. So, all that said, Monish, please go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know about you, your family, and your business.
Thanks, mate. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me. My name's Monish, and I'm from Brisbane on the east coast of Australia. And my wife, Michelle, and I have owned a design and construct residential general contracting remodeling business for the last 4.5 years. And we've got a 18-month-old son named Max Khadye. And I didn't mention this to you, Adam, but we just found out we're pregnant as well with our second one. So, yeah, super excited. And it's again, the start of that journey when you're finding out and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, super excited and excited for Max to be big brother as well. That's basically. And I also, for about a year now, I've been a construction business coach. I work with an American firm called the Construction Leading Edge, and I work with quite a few Americans and Canadians and people from the UK, Australia, New Zealand as well. And we'll work on Zoom, which is a lot easier than working on a construction site and driving around all the time and things like that. So, yeah, get to spend a lot more time at home now.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, and spending the time at home is going to be even more important when baby number 2 comes along. Because, like, when in the bio that you said you're you're trying for number 2. So now you come on here and tell me that's success. Success. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
And look, it's early days, and we kind of hope for the best, but we decided, like, there's a lot of when people fall pregnant, and it's the culture here anyway. When you're super excited, like you've just found out you're pregnant, you hold off till week 12 or whatever till you're at, But I know people that have had miscarriages and stuff, and they haven't been able to then share that and, the grieving process and not have that support system. So we're just like, well, it is what it is. Like, it's, we're pregnant. We're super excited. Hopefully it all goes well. But if it doesn't, we've got our family and friends who knew what's happened as well. So I'd rather
it's the same thing my wife and I said.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Why not have that? You have the support system. You're looking for the support system for being pregnant. So why would you not want the same support system if for some unknown reason you lose your baby? So to me, that was the same thought process. Like, let's celebrate. I want to celebrate now. I don't want to celebrate in 12 weeks. Like, let's enjoy it.
Yeah. So. My wife's like, man, you're horrible at keeping secrets. I'm like, it's not a secret I want to keep, to be honest. It's exciting.
Yeah, we were at I was at an event in Nashville for a GoBundance event, and we had just found out we were pregnant. We hadn't even told our family yet, and I was just sitting there, and I was like giddy. I was like, "Oh, guess what? Baby number 3 is on the way!" Like, because we were trying for like 2.5 years. We tried for baby number 3, and now we have Diana, and she's completely loved by her 2 older brothers. So it's an absolute blast. But yeah, watching the older sibling, take care of the baby is just so much fun. You're going to really enjoy the heck out of that. So.
Yeah, we got to start teaching him now that the attention is going to be split.
Yeah. And to me, it was including him. I mean, we had a little bit bigger of a gap. You're only going to have a 2-year gap, but we had a 4-year gap in between. So there was a lot more conversation that was able to be had, and a lot more helping that was able to be done. And like, hey, you're going to be able to help raise. And now both of them. Now, I mean, it's every 4 years it seems we have a kid. I think we're about done at this point, but. But now both of them are obsessed with helping their little sister. Like, oh, they'll go get diapers, and they'll help pick up this, and they'll help go do that. And like, oh, let's get I'm like, I don't know. I love it. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost like I'm a fan of being a dad, so I even get on calls and talk to people about it.
Yeah. And, it's always funny, like, hearing about stuff like that. Because so my wife's the third. She's the third daughter. And there's like, so her mum used to say that she was the slower one out of the 3, simply because the oldest daughter would just mother her. So if she tried to crawl or reach for something, the oldest one just give it to her. So Michelle's mom feels like Michelle's been kind of ripped off a bit because she wasn't allowed to, develop as quickly. But she's all right now. She's 34 years old, and I think she's developed okay.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah. So that's funny. Yeah, we'll see what happens now because we've got 2 boys and then a girl for the youngest. So I'm wondering if that's going to be the case here, where these 2 are going to be, fathering all the time, like being very cautious, or hey, don't do that, and do all the. But I don't know. These guys are adventurers. They want to climb on the roof of the house and do backflips onto the trampoline and do all the stuff. So I think they're going to be dragging their sister into craziness more than they're going to be protecting her from craziness. So it'll be a lot of fun. So what have you thought the first year and a half of being a dad? What have you thought about the first year and a half being a dad?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, we talk about business and stuff like that. My perspective instantly changed, like literally the day Max was born on all this stuff. And I've always worked. I've definitely been a workaholic, and a lot of that is because of the way my childhood was and growing up and stuff like that. And I've always just pushed and pushed and pushed with my career. And you kind of, if you have like the wheel of life and you look at the various aspects that are balanced out well, my career was just massively doing better than other areas of my life. Like I worked 6-day weeks. Even when I was at home, I'd be either working or I'd be reading business books and studying and stuff like that. Like I'm a carpenter by trade. And when I did my carpentry apprenticeship, which is a 4-year apprenticeship here, I also went to night classes and studied a diploma. After that, I got my GC license when I was 22, which is quite young here. And I quickly found out I know how to build, I don't know how to run a business. And so we didn't really, this is 12 years ago. There was no such thing as coaching and YouTube and stuff like that, right? It just didn't exist. So the only thing I knew I could do to improve myself was to go and study more. So I went to university and enrolled myself in a construction management degree, which I decided to do full time for. I wouldn't do that again coming back because I did that full time while working full time as well. And it's, I got to by the time I was, I think 25 years old, I was a commercial project manager, again, quite early to get to that in my career. And that was hard in itself, adjusting to that. And then, I just got absorbed in basically just work, keep improving, work, keep improving. And we moved to London for a year about 6 years ago. And that's when it sort of changed a bit because I kind of feel like when we went to London, I was like, well, I'm working here, but it doesn't really matter whether I do well or not because I'm going to go home and start my own business. That was always the plan. And so while we were there, I started kind of getting away from being addicted to work in a sense. And, we were traveling heaps. Like after that year, we spent 5 months just traveling through Western Europe, just sort of like backpacking through. Awesome. And, it was just like rehab, like not going to work for 5 months, like not doing anything. I still work up at 4 a.m. I've just always done that. And I'd study and do business planning and stuff for when we knew we were coming back and starting our own stuff. And we came here in January 29th, started our business, and we've done really well, like quite successful. And I got to a point when Max was born last year where I was basically doing about 8 hours a week in our business. But then I found out it's shorter time, but you're dealing with real high level stressful stuff, which, it kind of takes its toll because it's not like you come to your laptop, you do 8 hours worth of work and you leave. When you're dealing with that sort of stuff, you take it with you. And it's easy to say, people are like, I just disconnect. And it's like, well, I couldn't do that. Like I tried to, but it was very hard for me to be present with my family while not thinking about there's a lawsuit going on or whatever else, So we got to a point about 6 months ago where we made a very bold decision to basically have a semi-retirement. Like we've decided to shut our construction business down. And it's, no one sort of that I've spoken to has questioned, why would you do that? Like, are you going broke and stuff like that? Like over here, there's a website called House, which rates GCs and stuff. And we've got 5-star rating. We've got like awesome clients. We were quite profitable. Our employees were happy, subcontractors happy and stuff like that. But the thing is, like, after Max was born, I realized I basically have until he starts school, until his first day of school. We've got this time where we can do whatever we want with our kids, right? And give them that good start in life. And then once they start school and they've got their own sort of structure and routine, we can jump back into doing whatever we want with our businesses. Like we own property and, you know, and things like we've been good with investing. So financially we're at a place where we could do this. And that was in part thanks to me working, and same with Michelle, thanks to us working so hard over the last few years. And we kind of just decided, all right, let's just take 5 years off and just dedicate it to our kids. And then just, you know, after that, we'll probably do like multifamily developments and stuff like that eventually. But for now, just leave it all aside and just do stuff with our kids. So I told you, you know, in September this year, we're going across to the States for 11 weeks. We're just hanging out there for 11 weeks. I've got a conference to go to, but other than that, just, you know, there's no specific intention while we're going there. Like, we love traveling, so we want to do that with our kids. And we've also decided the year before Max starts school, we're going to go to Europe again for the entire year. And we'll do like 3 months in France, 3 months in Italy, 3 months in Greece, and 3 months somewhere else to try and decide. But the idea there is like we're spending basically as much time with our kids as possible before they start school and they go off and do that sort of stuff. And it really was like when Max was born, the sense of fulfillment that I got was like nothing compared to every one of my achievements leading up to that. And I was just like, all right. And it's sort of, like I said, it comes from my childhood because I didn't, you know, I had a pretty challenging upbringing, I suppose. And I grew up going like the ideal, the number one goal, I suppose, is that I want to be a really good father, you know, so everything I did, like, and even when I worked and stuff, the motivation there wasn't so much money and stuff like that. It was just like, I want to get to a point where I can provide for my family and you know, them not having to go through what I went through sort of thing. And so when Max was born, you know, going through my goals, I was like, I've ticked everything off with my career. Like there's nothing there that I feel like I haven't done and I need to hang in there sort of thing. And I said, oh, I think it's time to, you know, hang up the bags basically. And now if my goal is really to be a good father, how can I improve on that? And the easiest way is just time. Let's just give him more time. Because what I found out with kids, man, it's like you don't have to have an agenda or a plan or whatever. Like if I just sit on the couch with him for 2 hours, he's happy as. Like he'll just all he wants to do is just have me around and he'll play around me. Like I don't have to actually have a plan to, we're going to do coloring now or whatever. Like he'll make his own games up. But if I'm not there or Michelle's not there, he's kind of longing for us to just be present, basically. And getting rid of the business meant, you know, I don't get phone calls, I don't get emails and stuff like that. So I don't mentally switch off. It's nice and wrapped up, and I can just mentally be present. And it's been quite great. So it's a bit controversial, like you know, giving up your business for that. But I think it's at the end of the day, like you kind of ask yourself, why do you have certain goals? Why do you want to run a successful business? Why do you want to, you know, make so much money and stuff like that? And for me, the end was always family. So I was like, I'm just going to start with what's on the right and work my way to the left.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, if you go with the end in mind, right, what the goal is in mind, like, you're going to make much better and much different decisions than if you just, like, I'd love to say I don't understand why people do nothing but strive for money, because I do. I get that, especially if you don't come from much. But at the same point, like, there's got to be a why behind it. If you don't have a why, like, the money's not going to fulfill you, right? I mean, it's just not. It's not going to. Like, hitting all those check marks, hitting all those things. I mean, the amount of awards and things that I've got from the military and bouncing around, like, it doesn't do it. Like, I've had a lot of cool titles, and to your point, like, the second that I was called dad for the first time, it was like, oh my goodness, like, broke my heart. Like, it was like, well, filled my heart, I should say. It didn't break my heart. Like, I was just, like, filled with joy. I just absolutely love being a dad. But you mentioned a couple times, and I want to go to it. Tell me a little bit about like how you grew up and your dad and how that maybe affected or how it maybe changed your thought process on being a dad.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Mumbai in India, right? And like me and both my parents moved to Australia when I was in grade 11, when I was 16. And growing up, so I grew up in a 1-bedroom apartment with my parents and my grandparents and my auntie as well. So it was a pretty crowded house to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
What I know now, like I'll go on two different tangents, but what I know now of my mum is that my mum's autistic, and I didn't know that growing up, right? I actually didn't know that till about 2 years ago, until she kind of revealed it herself, and it made a lot of sense. But mum basically, like, and I've seen mum with Max and how she struggled to handle things like Max crying. Like it's a very, like the whole sensory thing. I don't know if you know much about autism, but like noises and things like that are quite disturbing. And I saw that. And now she's fantastic with Max, by the way. Like as he's gotten a bit older, she's actually been a big part of his development, because coincidentally, she's an occupational therapist. So she works with kids with autism and stuff like that as well. But so the thing though on the other side is, like, as a child, mum wasn't very empathetic. She just doesn't have the capacity to. It's not that she was a bad person. She just doesn't have the capacity to. So like I didn't get like hugs and cuddles and stuff like that from either of my parents growing up. Right. And with mum, like she had a lot of anxiety, and she would go into like fits of rage and stuff like that as well. So I'd get a lot of violence from mum. Like I know now it was unintentional, but as a kid, you don't understand that. Like as a kid, you think something's wrong with you, right? Like every time something like that happens, sort of thing. And on the flip side, my dad was an alcoholic. He very narcissistic. That didn't work and stuff like that. Like I was in my parents were in a sort of like a domestic violence type relationship. Like I saw that too much, too often. Again, a lot of violence from my dad with me as well. No love or anything like that. And the effects of that, like as you're kind of growing up in that environment, which is completely unsafe, you develop these very negative core values about yourself as a person. Because you're just, as a kid, you just kind of do whatever you have to do to cope with it, right? And eventually you sort of you start then separating from your parents. And it's quite interesting. I'm reading a book at the moment called Hold On to Your Kids. It's by Gabor Mate and another individual. I'll have a look at that in a sec. But it's quite eye-opening. And as I was growing up, like, and I found this out, I ended up going to see a psychologist when I was 30, probably like extremely late. But I probably should have gone.
But you went.
Yeah, but I went. Yeah, I went, and it was quite revealing. Like, how much I went to psychologist because I thought there was issues with my career. Like I was burnt out, and I thought this is what's going on, and it all traced back to my childhood and these negative core values that were entrenched in me, which were that I'm not powerful and that I'm not good enough, sort of thing. And now I know, like, going through that process is that it wasn't like it had nothing to actually do with me. It was, I was just born in that household and it was just the way the situation was. But growing up, I had a lot of, and then again, like we moved to Australia when I was 16. So growing up, I tended to, when I was in Mumbai, I'd try and not be home much, because if home's unsafe, you don't want to be there, basically.
Yep.
So I'd be with my friends or whatever. And I went to the same school from like kindergarten till grade 11. So I had the same peer network growing up. And then I moved, like at 16, I moved countries and I had no one, basically.
Yeah.
And then I found new friends here and they're some of my best friends today even, right? And this was 18 years ago or something like that. I came here. So again, the same pattern followed. Like I just wouldn't want to be home. And that led to, when you're a teenager, it leads you to do a lot of things that you shouldn't, because you're influenced by your friends instead of your parents. Because you just don't have a good parent role model sort of thing. So, I got in a bit of trouble, like going through high school and stuff like that. I used to get really good grades, and I just stopped trying, started skipping school, started doing stuff that you probably shouldn't. And then eventually got into the trade and went through doing that. But when I got into construction, it was kind of like I knew this is what I can be good at, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was one of those things where compared to school, I enjoyed it. And whatever effort I put in, I got out. So if I worked hard, I got promoted and things like that. So it just became a natural fit. And that just kept going up and up and up and up. And I just saw, like, the harder I try, I get that good feeling. I don't feel like I'm not good enough. I don't feel like I'm powerless. I didn't realize this at the time, but it's just something that naturally kind of built up. And so I just kept going. But eventually, as I said, that kind of turned into an addiction because it's like you never got to a point where you were like, all right, man, this is cool. Like I can, this is home. I can stay here. It's like, no, I gotta keep pushing myself and achieve the next thing so I can be good enough then and things like that. But also on the side, I had this voice in my head that was always, my compass was to do the direct opposite of everything my dad turned out to be. Yeah. So I was like, I can't take time off because, my dad he was just a bum. And so it was like, if I take time off, I'm going to end up like him. So that meant I worked overtime. Like it was just about work sort of thing, like, and things like that. And, I didn't have a healthy relationship with alcohol myself either, which you kind of go two ways, right? Like you either just completely leave it aside or you get into it too early. And I started drinking when I was 16 and binge drinking and never really had any control until really like a few years ago, until very recently sort of thing. And there was always that element of guilt for whatever reason that, and the fear that I look a lot like my dad. And I'm just like, one day I'm going to end up being like him. I'm just going to turn out like it's inevitable. And so I was just constantly running away from that. So going through the psychologist, like we worked on a lot of things, a lot of specific events through my childhood that were quite traumatic. And it was quite interesting. The way she did it was, she did this thing called EMDR, which is like eye movement. It's basically something that's used for PTSD and stuff like that. And that's what I had. Like I have night terrors and all that sort of stuff as well. And going back into my childhood memories, like she basically helped me replace my image as a child with my image as an adult. Like with my, like I could see my hands on my adult size hands and stuff. So it changed how that memory worked against me to me just going in there and be like, I can handle the situation because I'm a big guy now. And that helped quite, like I couldn't believe how much that changed my internal dialogue, because every time there'd be a stressful event in life or whatever, like I would react, out of fear, like most people do. Like even if it's anger, it usually starts with fear. And you go back to your inner child and what your inner child's feeling instead of how, and it'd always be an overreaction. And that was particularly hard, like through COVID and stuff, because everyone was just, it was a period of high anxiety and stuff like that. But I was glad that I'd started seeing a psychologist before the COVID period to go through all that sort of stuff. And so in terms of timing, by the time Max was born, I had dealt with all these issues. I had kind of dealt with my past and uncovered it in a way where I'd never really attempted to even go there. Like it's, when something's bad, you just kind of bury it and go, I'm never going to turn around and look back. I'm just going to keep moving forward. But it was important to do that because once I fixed that, now that when I parent Max, I've got an awareness of certain things where I'm projecting my insecurities on him. Yeah. Whereas I don't really need to, sort of thing. And a good example of that is when when he cries in the middle of the night, we eventually ended up getting a sleep consultant, things like that. But when he does that, like, we were told to leave him alone, and, he self-soothes and stuff. And it definitely works. Like, I 100% agree with it. But in that moment, like, when he's crying and he's calling out dada and mama and stuff like that, my instinct was just to go and pick him up, because going back, although I knew, like, he needs to go through this to learn, it kept going back to me thinking of myself as a kid. It's like, I wish there was someone there to kind of come pick me up, so I'm a lot more aware of how I react when I'm under stress now, and why that's coming from my past. So I don't project that onto it and try and stay out of it, sort of thing.
That is phenomenal.
It's made a pretty,
yeah. It takes a lot of work to get to that point. I applaud you for pushing through that and doing that, because I talked to a lot of people about your, everybody, a lot of people have heard it. You're either running from something or you're running towards something, right? And oftentimes, if we have some sort of childhood trauma, or whatever you see in your parents, there's that image of like a child being abused by the dad, and then the child grows up and it goes around the circle, and then that dad now is abusing the child, and then grows up and it's just like this circle of crap. Unless you're somebody like yourself who is strong-willed, strong-minded, realizes what's going on and runs away from that. That can also be unhealthy, but you figured out how to take that running away to facing it and realizing what it is. I think it was Dr. Kelly Flanagan, if I recall correctly, was at a GoBundance event last year. And he was talking about that same thing you were just saying about the inner child, right? That fear of going back into, those fears, and that those reactions are oftentimes just your inner child, your childhood needing to be, forgiven or, apologized to, like that type of thing. And so when you were saying that, I was like, man, this is like exactly like what Dr. Flanagan had talked about. It was really cool to kind of hear, and putting that perspective on it. I really, that's impressive. How much time would you say that it took, or like, to really start to like tear down those previous images and put in, a more positive self-image to, I call it usually like a wireframe. Like, you have a wireframe that your brain always goes back to. Just like any time there's hurt or there's pain or there's whatever, and it's time to react to something, you go back to a wireframe and you move forward. But sometimes you have to tear that wireframe down and build a new one. How long do you think it took you to kind of tear that wireframe down and build that one that you can relate to now?
Well, I guess my journey with the whole self-awareness and self-reflection would have started around 2015 is when I started journaling. So I heard on the Tim Ferriss podcast about how he journals and things like that. And I was like, yeah, I'll try this out, because the other downside I had was I was very cagey with my emotions. So my wife, like, we've been together for 13 years now, I think. And, she, like, for more than half of that time together, I didn't tell her how I felt about anything. I was just kind of like, I just had, it's just work. Like, I didn't reveal to her how much stress I was actually under when I was doing certain things. And so I started journaling, because there was, at the time anyway, it was a very, I guess it's a male thing, right? Like, I didn't share that with anyone, not with my mates or nothing. I was just like, this is my problem and I've got to fix it, and I'm just going to do it on my own. I'm not going to look for support or make my problem someone else's. So I started journaling. As I started journaling, it helped me think in that linear pattern and actually ask a few more questions of myself and reveal stuff. And then you kind of, it's like opening up Pandora's box in a way. Like, you go, all right, well, I'm feeling this way, but it's not because of what happened today. So why is this happening? And things like that. And then eventually, when I went to see the psychologist, I found out about when I'd have nightmares or night terrors or whatever, and I'd wake up not remembering them, but I'd wake up angry or depressed or whatever. And I remember there would be days when I'd journal in the mornings, and I was like, I just don't understand why I'm angry right now. Like, why am I angry? I didn't, like, nothing bad happened yesterday or whatever. Like, it just didn't make sense until, and that's when I was like, I'm as far as I can get. I need professional help. I had to admit that to myself. I had to get professional help. And the funny thing is, when I started doing that and I started telling people about it, especially with my friends, and they were like, oh yeah, I get that too. Or, I've had panic attacks, or I've had this and I've had that. And then I found like there was a lot of power in vulnerability, in the sense that every time I'd open up to someone, they'd share something and I could actually help them. I could say, you should go do this, or, go see this person, or read this book or whatever. And then that would start their journey. And I then realized that there's a lot more people that do need someone to talk to. Like, it's amazing what like a 1 minute or 2 minute conversation, the difference that can make in someone's life in the long term. And so it started with journaling, but I started doing that 8 years ago now. So it takes a long time. It's super difficult. Like, when you go to those, when you go and sit down with a psychologist and go through those sessions, it's hard. It's very confronting, going back into your memories. Like, before we started off, she told me to write down a list of my 20 worst memories, right, as a kid. And it was just like the most triggering thing to actually just write this list down. And I got down to 12 and I handed that in and I was like, look, I can't. That's as far as I can get. I can't really think of anything and beyond it. And then, she probably shouldn't have said this like in a professional thing, but she started reading it and she was like, she was getting angry. And she said, look, it's surprising that you're at this point in life, because reading through this, you should either be a drug addict or you should be suicidal. And you're neither of those things, which is great. And I was like, well, thanks. that's
success number one. Yes.
Yeah. And, but I found out through that, like, there's an element that if this is something that I found out and it's helped me quite substantially, I need to share with people. I need to share with people so that they can go, yeah, I can go through this myself, and it's okay when you get to the other side. Like, if anything, your life's going to be better, because mine is. But yeah, it takes time and it's super challenging. But what isn't? Like, if you're trying to lose weight and you go to the gym, it's hard, but you're then healthier at the other end. Like, same with anything you guys do for work and achievements and stuff. Like, yeah, it's hard, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, agreed. And the psychology side of it is really, it hits home with me a lot. I mean, where I'm a military veteran, and we in America we have 22 veterans a day committing suicide. And it's like, that's a massive loss of talent, of skills, of fatherhood and motherhood and brothers and sisters, like just a massive loss of human capital. That breaks my heart, and to think that, if we can get more people to be able to open up about a lot of that stuff, and deal with their PTSD or the things that are going on in their life, like it's, especially when you look at a military group, like you feel like you're told that you have to hold everything in. Like that's just what we do. We hold it in, especially, we're men, we're holding this in. Nobody's going to hear about it, And for me, there was a couple moments with my wife that, I finally opened up. I've been through some stuff, but nothing compared to some of my coworkers and friends. And it's just one of those, like, if it helped me just to open up my mouth to my wife, just to get some vulnerability, having somebody to listen to, even if she has not, like, she's no degree, no nothing, just a set of ears. And that was all I needed, and it, like, the amount of weight that it took off, that I hope that people build it up inside of themselves to open their mouth. And, I'm hoping that you're inspiring some folks to just, like, hey, let me just go talk to, even if it's their spouse, if it's their whatever, maybe it's not professional help yet. You took a few years of just journaling and trying to work through it yourself. But, getting that help is an unbelievable life changer that, is very freeing. And it sounds like it was very similar for you. It's kind of a freeing moment for you.
100%. And
I think you're going to be a much better father for it too.
Freedom.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I said, I think you're going to be a much better father for it too. Like you having that freedom and having that, I would venture to guess, between, that's probably also why you love to travel as much as you do. Like, there was such you were, you feel that freedom now, and it's like, no, I'm out. Like, you already had it ingrained in you in a negative way to be traveling and being away from the house. And then now, you stayed so focused on work, and you're like, no, I can do this in a more freeing and comfortable way. Let me go travel and be away from the house
Yeah.
on my terms, not because I'm forced to, but on my terms. Like, do you think
Yeah.
that is part of the reason why you want to go out and do all this travel, or is it just because?
Mate, I'd never thought about it that way, but it totally makes sense now that you said it that way. Like when me and my wife met, I was like, travel's a waste of money. Like, you can't, if I'm traveling, I'm not working, I'm not earning any money. That was how bad and toxic my mindset was then.
No.
And she basically coaxed me into traveling over time, and then I just loved it. And now, like I said, like with all my goals were like based on my career, right? Like other than the end goal of being a great dad, which is kind of like a slow burn. Like, you're not gonna, no one's gonna give you a medal overnight and stuff like that, right? It's just something that you find out. It's intangible, but you find it over time. So because my personal stuff's ticked off, I'm now looking out for, all right, how do we fulfill Michelle's goals? How do we fulfill Max's goals? Like, what do I need to do to tick off their bucket list or whatever? And Michelle loves to travel. And so every time we go away, it's just, all right, where do you want to go? And literally, when we did that 5-month trip traveling through Europe, I didn't know where we were going the next day. It was, to me, every day was a surprise, and it was awesome. Whereas Michelle is very meticulously planned every single day. She's got a spreadsheet going and all that sort of stuff. I think, part of it probably is like, because the way I am, I guess it kind of works in well with Michelle. And that's, it's really awesome that we met, and she's been like great with me. Like, it was pretty funny. Like, in the early years, instead of me just opening up, I would just try and break up with it. Like, I'd be like, I'm probably not good for you in the long term. Like, you probably just need to go and find someone else. Like, that was how bad I was, and like, now looking back, you think about that and go, man, like, how did I not realize that I should go see someone? How did I not realize that there's something seriously wrong with me? But, our strength is communication. Like, we communicate quite well. Part of it was, like I said, Michelle used to work in the States, so we had a long distance relationship for about a year, and I came and visited twice a year. But the rest of the time, we'd just be, emailing or on Skype back then. And it forced us, when you're not physically present, because it's easier when you're physically present to just sit on the couch and watch a movie. But when you're not physically in the same room, all you've got is just talking, right? Which is fantastic. Because like, we've kept that still. That was 11 years ago. We communicate every single day and quite well. So I think the travel thing, the adventure thing, is now not so much me running away, but me realizing that, it's such a big open world out there. And I'd love my kids to have perspective on life, like not just grow up in a sheltered environment and think this is it. Like, especially, over here in Australia anyway, like, life's really good. There's like, the sky's like a very distinct blue color. Like, we lived right near nice beaches and like, there's low crime. It's pretty, like, life's pretty good here. But I didn't grow up in that environment. So I want them to kind of, and not just where I grew up, but like, go and see where other countries, how they're doing stuff, not just the bad stuff, but what are they doing better? How could we improve lives here and things like that? Because, deeply, I'd like my kids to be entrepreneurs as well when they're older. Yeah. And I feel like that perspective is probably going to give them more of a base than anything they're going to learn in school or college or whatever.
I completely agree. Yeah, Acton Academy is one of those that's talked a lot about in for schools like here inside of Go Abundance. There's quite a few folks who have gone to an Acton Academy, and they're much more about learning through life than they are learning through a classroom. Learning through more experience and involvement with each other, and one of my buddies, Sergio, if you haven't met him yet, he's also in Go Abundance, Sergio Altamare, but he's phenomenal. And his, inside of his class, inside of his daughter's class, they're like, look, you could travel all you want. That's fine. Like, and that's one of the reasons I want to start homeschooling my kiddos, because I like to travel. I like to be able to go places. Anytime I go on a Go Abundance trip, I'd love to be able to bring them with me. And, if I'm going on anything, like if I'm going to go check on one of my businesses, I want to be able to bring them. So like, to me, all that travel and that experience sets them up so much more for life than going through learning to move when that bell rings and learning to, go through and imagine I got to travel the world as an adult, and traveled the country a little bit as a kid. The exposure that I had was well beyond anybody that I went to high school with, and then when I went to college after I got out of the military, I was like, I'd already been to Iraq, Afghanistan, Korea, been around the world, like exposed to all sorts of different things. I'm going to college with kids who'd never left the county they were born in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it boggled my mind, and it's like, you have no experience in life. You have no, how are you getting a basis? Your basis is coming from whatever this teacher's telling you. And that is not the world. Like, go out and see the world, like go and enjoy it. Like the world is where a majority of your learning is going to come from, but for whatever reason, we're stuck in this pattern of no, you have to do this in school and you have to do this and you have to get these check marks. And it's like, no, I don't. I think you're going to be much more, like you said, much more set up for life, by seeing all of this other stuff and being exposed to the good and the bad in life. And, I think you're on the right track. I like it.
Yeah. We've got a plan. So because of the way my schooling was, and to me, like, school was great. Like, besides teachers and stuff, the peer network was great. And not just in India, but over here as well. I didn't do too well at school because I didn't care about it. Like you said, with the teachers saying, do this, do that. I just didn't do it. And I still turned out okay in the long term. But what I've thought about, like, compared to homeschooling, so in a school year here, you get 12 weeks of school holidays, right, where the kids don't go to school. And that's spread across the year. And so what we've decided to do is, with those 12 weeks, we'll travel. And we'll travel in a way that supplements our kids' education. Like, as an example, if Max is studying geography at school, right, and they're talking about the snowy mountains or whatever, where we don't have them locally, the next school holidays we'll go and visit somewhere that it snows. So he's actually connecting what he's learnt in theory with practical life. Like, what does it actually look and feel like to touch snow, for example? So, I didn't see snow till, I can't remember how old I was. I was in my 20s, sort of. So, but I learned about it in primary school. So there was like a 20-year gap between when I learned that there's snow that exists to when I actually got to see it. So there's things like that. And I figured, like, there's good schools, bad schools. And we've already picked out that our kids will go to ideally good schools. Like, Michelle went to good schools here. And so she's gone, that's what's going through. But I feel like education starts at home. And so it should be, when Max does go to school, you're paying, I suppose, the school or whatever to teach him certain curriculum, but you've got to support how he absorbs it and what he does with it next. Another example I'll give you is, so both Michelle and I, like, we started work quite young. Like, I started work when I came here when I was 16. I had 2 jobs through high school. And Michelle started working when she was, I think, 14 and a half or whatever the legal age is here. And we both kind of worked in supermarkets, just doing the checkout sort of thing. And Michelle said that, when our kids are older, they're going to have to go to work as well and do all that. And I said, no, they need to learn how to make a living and understand the value of money and stuff. But I don't want them to go and work in a supermarket, because they don't have to do the same stuff that we did. I said, why wouldn't we, like, considering our success hasn't come from when we worked in the supermarket, it's worked from when we invested in real estate, or we did, we started a business or whatever. So I said, I would rather us teach our kids at that young age how to start a business or how to invest in property. And we could be the bank, and we could still, give them a loan and that they have to pay back. So they actually understand that there's no handouts, but we're in a position to do that for our kids. So why wouldn't we allow our kids to start working on financial freedom from when they're like 12 years old? Why would we allow them to go into the same system that everyone else is, then learn how to, how to pack grocery bags? Like, it's fine. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but we're just at a point where we can provide our kids to have a better education in terms of personal finance. And I'd rather do that.
No, I love that thought process. I mean, I've been doing the same thing with my boys and talking about finance and investing and how all of that works and trying to get them on that right path because, like I joined the military because I didn't know there was another option, right? I mean, it was just, that's what both of my parents did. So that's what I did. Probably why you got a job at the supermarket, right? I mean, that's the jobs that they have for 16-year-olds. I'm going to go do that, because you didn't know there was another option. But if we could teach our kids, like, no, there are other options. You could be, if one of them want to join the military, go for it. But just know there are other options. And like, you're not forced into doing any of this. But if I could teach you how finance works, how to manage your money, how to build a business, how to do all of this stuff from home, like that's an advantage that I definitely did not have. But I love I have the same concept on I'll be the bank and you owe the bank, right? You're still going to owe me. Like there is no free ride. We just went and did this like shark tooth hunt thing, right? So there's this spot that used to be a long time ago up part of the ocean, and they keep digging up a bunch of stuff, and you can find like megalodon teeth and all this stuff.
Oh wow!
So my son, I got a couple, a small one that they left in here for me.
Wow!
But we had like, I don't know, 250 daggum little shark teeth. And I was like, son, what are we going to do with 250 shark teeth, right? So then we looked it up and I said, all right, well, how about you make some necklaces, right? We could set this up. You make some necklaces. We could sell them for X amount of money. This is how a business works. So we can build all this stuff. And we've got an au pair so they can, put all these things together. And I said, and then we'll make a business plan where, you guys pay me X% until I get my money back. And then we split it to something else. So I'm always trying to think of these types of things to get them thinking in a different way. They haven't started making them though. I need to get on that. I need to be a better CEO of that company and get that up and running and see if I can get my investment back. But
they're probably looking to hire someone else to do the labor.
Exactly. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. But it's got to come out of your wallet, So it's
and that's the other thing. Like, I want to teach my kids to not have to sell their time for money. Like that should, because I did that quite a fair bit myself, and so I want to teach them that you can do passive investments. Like you can figure out how to make money work for you or provide jobs to other people who want them to then earn a bit of a cut off it sort of thing. And if you're doing that at an early age growing up, it allows you, like you said, like if they want to go join the army or whatever, like you can follow, let's say, your passion. You can follow something that's as an outlier or as a niche instead of having to finish school, go to college, be an undergrad, like just follow that path. And then eventually in your 30s, try and get to a point where you're financially free. Whereas if you're financially free first, if you attain that first, I said to Michelle, like they could then pursue something that's, they could go into something that's super creative, maybe, which doesn't pay a lot of money. But if you have the space to do that, you'll be really good at it, right? If you don't have to do it to earn money, you can be more creative. They can go into science and work on something super niche and end up, I don't know, doing space exploration or whatever. Something, again, quite a high barrier to entry. You got to put a lot of hard work into getting there. But if you don't have the necessity to have to, I got to earn money to pay rent, so I can't go and study this.
Well, we have a visitor. You gonna go get in the pool? Maybe. I mean, you're wearing your swim shorts and you're coming and getting on camera with no shirt on. Oh, speaking of the shark teeth, we're just talking about the shark teeth. And they're a little shark tooth necklace.
Nice.
Yeah. You going to make some of those shark tooth necklaces we talked about?
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe. All of a sudden now. Yeah. No, not wanting to earn the money now. Is that the problem? You might. You had said something that I wanted to comment on, and then I had an 8-year-old visitor show up, and I don't remember what it was that I was going to comment on now. Thanks, buddy. You want to say hi? You say hi to Mr. Monish? There you go.
Hi.
Hey.
Listen to his accent.
I hear you're starting a necklace business.
I can't hear very well.
He said he hears you're starting a necklace business. What do you think? You want to do that? I mean, you've told me yes, and now it's an I don't know when I get you on camera.
Maybe.
I've told him he needs to start a YouTube channel too.
No, I'm not going to.
All right, Daddy's gonna get back to talking. Okay. Give me my headset. Rascal stealing my headset. Yeah. Welcome to being a dad of an 8-year-old. Good luck. This is what you have to look forward to. So, he still has the other part of my headphone. But,
yeah.
But yeah, the what was it that you were mentioning that I wanted to make a comment about? The disturbance of the 8-year-old.
So I was talking about passive investing, right? Teaching kids how to have a passive income so that they can. Yep. And same thing if they want to be like professional athletes and stuff like that. Like where basically anything that you have to put a lot of effort in, not be paid for quite a while to become successful in that area. They can choose that field if there's passive income already coming in. Yeah. So that's where I want to teach my kids from an early age how to do that.
Yeah. So I love that setting them up for that level of success is like amazing, right? And then I look at that and I think to myself, so there's a reason I started the Biz Dad podcast, right? Because I think that not that moms are not important. This is not at all what the purpose of this statement is, but dads have an extremely important role in the family. I don't remember the study, but it showed here in America, at least, that single parent households ran by just the mom, the child has much higher risk of getting arrested, much higher risk of not graduating high school, much higher risk of all this stuff. Like a 2-parent household is the number one predictor of a child actually graduating high school, not going to jail, and becoming a for lack of better terms, productive member of society. Fatherless households result in going to jail, not graduating high school. I mean, that doesn't mean everybody, right? But that's statistically a much higher chance. And if a single parent household that is the dad running it is not as good as the 2-parent household, but better than just the mom running it. And that doesn't mean, again, that the moms are not important. I could not do what I'm doing if it wasn't for my wife. My wife is unbelievably important in this house. But I think that having the emphasis on the father being there is extremely, extremely important. And then I look at it and go, okay, well, if you have a single mother household, right, that mom has no choice but to go out and get 1 or 2 jobs, which means they're not able to even help their child be successful and have those opportunities because they can't. They're still doing nothing but trading their time for money because they don't have any other option. There's not that ability to go out and build these things and to do these things as possible in a 2-parent household. And the importance of being able to express that to a child and give them those opportunities, like that's what we should all be striving for. And I think it's a blessing that we're able to at a different level because of where we're at, the successes that we've had. And not everybody is able to have those successes, but man, oh man, even in our businesses though, we can provide an opportunity for our employees to be able to earn those and be able to bring their kids in on things. And like, to me, like I just love being able to give the kids opportunities. I wanted to be a dad since I was like 13. So like seeing this and like being a dad and say, oh, how can I make an impact and how can I make other people's children even more successful? And, I love the thought process that you have on that and the passion behind it. So I completely agree. I want to be like, I think we should all be trying to set our kids up for success. There's plenty of parents that just float through parenthood without a why, without a reason, without a drive. It's just, because my wife got knocked up, I'm a dad, like, holy crap, like that's a terrible reason to be a dad. Like, like just because, or some random person I met got knocked up that, now I'm a dad. And it's like, man, just the intentionality behind it is extremely important. And that's one thing I've loved about talking to Go Abundance guys is that's where a lot of us, we have that drive to have that whole family, your whole life millionaire, right? Like it's like plenty of people, like you mentioned at the beginning, like your success in business was by far and away better than any of your other successes. So you may have been a millionaire in this one category, but man, you had a massive deficit in these other categories over here. And that's where I think that, we're trying to set our families, our kids up for success in that way. And I think that's awesome of you. I love hearing it. I
also see of it as quite a substantial return on investment in terms of my time, right? Like if both Michelle and I have gone and done all that, we've done the hard yards and we have now capital, which we didn't have when we started our career.
Mm-hmm.
So we can teach our kids to utilize capital, basically. Like, yes, as a 12-year-old, you can go to a bank and get a loan to, buy a bunch of houses or whatever. But if your parents, if we have that, we can teach you how loans work and how to actually evaluate investments and things like that. And so you can kind of, if you've got to that point in life, like, why would you start your kids to learning journey down at base level? Like, why wouldn't you start at somewhere higher? Like, so when Max is 12 years old, I'll teach him let's go look for properties. Let's go figure out, what's a good property buy. Let's go figure out how tenants work and how you deal with them and things like that. Like, it's a level of education that now I've learned from mistakes, right? Like when we bought our first property and how that's all gone through. Why wouldn't you pass that down? Why would you let your kid just go and relearn how to, like I said, pack grocery bags? It doesn't make sense. So it's, and again, then let's say by the time Max is 20, if he's got sufficient passive income to carry through his 20s and he doesn't have that insecurity about like paying rent or whatever the case may be, he's in a better position to make better long-term decisions. Like you were saying, if there's a single mum, she's got no choice but to have a couple of jobs and all that sort of thing. And whereas if Max has income coming in, he has a choice. Like he can go into the career that he wants and things like that too. So I think, it's about, like I said, not selling your time for money and thinking about how can we, like Michelle and I, build up for our kids something that they can keep kind of working through.
I'm finally getting my headphone back. Man. Little punk. Back. Get out of here. Get out of here, you punk. I think that, it's, this kid is way better off than most, and I love being able to provide him opportunities to be able to do that. And I don't know, it is an unbelievable passion of mine, and it sounds like you're right on that same path. And with baby number 2 coming, you better get ready to double it up because man, oh man, it gets more and more exciting. Now I'm going to create them 2 as business partners. I'm 3 now that I've got 3 as all business partners and try to create them and bring them in. One of the questions I like to ask is how you're going to involve the kids in the business, and or if you're going to, and it sounds like you are well on your way of thinking through that. So that's awesome. But it's also like, so I've got the highest grade GC license you can get in Australia. Okay. And it's quite hard here to do that. It's taken me 12 years, and it's something that's only going to get harder. So by the time Max is old enough to actually apply for a license, it's going to be super difficult for him to get that. Whereas if I've already got it, and I'm not saying like nepotism type stuff, but like if I've got the license, we'll do something together. Like I'll be the licensing partner, but he's got to come up with whatever he wants to do with it and cover my risk and my exposure and everything. But of course I'm going to do that for my kid and my kids. Sorry. So it's again, why wouldn't we utilize something that I've worked hard for the next generation and thereafter even? And, Michelle and I speak about this sort of stuff all the time. Like, how would we do it? Like we've got a family trust and all that sort of stuff. And how would we bring our kids into it and allow them, like, we don't want to do the allowance thing. Like, we don't want to just give them money for being alive, basically. Like, I still want to instill, you got to earn your share and go through it, sort of thing. So I don't know, there's a way to go, but it's something to think about and figure out how can we set ourselves up to help them from an early age, not help them in the sense of give them handouts, but help them be educated about finances and things like that. Yeah. I had zero education in finance, so I'd love to be able to pass a little bit more on to them than I had. I think I learned how to balance a checkbook in like home economics class in high school, right? Or junior high. That was about the extent of my financial education, and it was, I think it would be ridiculous if, like let's look at a lot of parents like with sports, right? If somebody really loves football, then they typically are going to try to get their kids into football, right? And they're going to teach them everything they know about football and all this stuff. But yet, for some reason, we don't look at the same stuff with life in general. If you look at just your your average family. They're not looking at all of the things they know about life and trying to pass them on to their kids. They'd rather just focus on these one or two things that society seems to think are the most important things for people to do at certain ages. And it's like, man, no, like I want my kids to be a whole life successful, not just, one or two things. I want them to chase their passions. Don't get me wrong. But man, I want them to just be exposed to as much as possible. And
I think there's a lot of, when it comes to money, like I've seen this quite frequently, like, people who are wealthy and stuff as well, don't converse with their kids about money. And so you have this, like the second generation or the third generation that sometimes as well, that's like, my parents are well off, but I don't really understand why or, what they do exactly and stuff like that. And it's just, I think it's like a taboo subject. I don't know why, again, but like for me, it's like, I'd love to teach my kids like how compound interest works, and how you invest in shares, how do you invest in property, how you invest in business and what happens over time and things like that, instead of just saying, like, I know a couple of people that weren't allowed to talk about money at home, like growing up. They just weren't allowed. And it's weird because, these adults now don't know how to make informed decisions, like in terms of, or they've got to go and make a bad decision and then learn from that, unfortunately. So I was lucky in the sense that, like, so my mum did speak to me about money, and growing up, my grandfather as well, he taught me a lot. Like, he'd take me to the bank, like, he said to bounce check, like he'd take me to the bank, he opened my account and he showed me how to do stuff and things like that. He used to get me to play Monopoly with him, and he had all these little games to kind of like teach me, how to do that sort of stuff. Because as a kid, you just want to play games, but he was teaching me like these subtle lessons back then. So I really owe everything I've done in terms of finance to my grandfather. And it's sort of those sort of conversations are what I want to have with my kids moving forward as well. Teach them that.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I'm glad that you had somebody
at the end of the day.
It is. I mean, that it really is all it is. I mean, even life as itself is kind of a game as we're going through and trying to figure out how to win or have successes in one area or another, and even being a parent, like how do I know that I'm being a successful dad? And, am I doing well in this game of being a dad? And it's a constant trial and error, but it's still a game. It's still something and you can have fun with it, and I truly just love being a dad, as you could probably see just from him coming in after he gave me my headphone back. He like stuck his tongue out me through the window and like did one of these little things dancing away. Well, you little rascal. But that's the kind of relationship we have, and I want to be able to continually do that. And we've played Monopoly. I really don't want to get the cash flow board game for him. I want it to be able to play that Rich Dad Poor Dad one. Yeah. So my au pair, I actually just bought her. She's from Brazil, so I bought her Rich Dad Poor Dad in Portuguese. Our first au pair, she was from Colombia, so I got it for her in Spanish. So I'm trying to influence as many people as I can into these types of conversations, and and I mean, even if she starts to talk to my boys and my daughter about it. That's more influence for them too. If she's like, "Oh, and your dad gave me this book, and it's about blah blah blah," and like it just, I want that conversation always. Like the tabooness of money and like politics, religion, and money. Like we've become so afraid to have conversations because we said that things were off limits, and I think that's one of the reasons that we have a whole group of people that are afraid to hear something that is dissenting from them, because we've been told certain things are just off limits you don't talk about. That we now can't just have a conversation to say, okay, well, how can we do better at this, or how can we do better at that? Like, if we're not having conversations with our kids about money, then how do we expect them to do better than us at managing it and building things? If we can't talk to them about what our religious views are, or can't talk to other people about these things, then we're like, it's one thing, again, to go back to GoBundance, not to like beat this dead horse with, but we're a group of guys that have no problem breaking into each other's financial lives, our family lives, our, what we're addicted to types of lives, what we need help in, like our fitness, like whatever it is, break it down and say, okay, how is it that you can improve this section of your life? How is it that you can be a better dad, be a better husband? How is it that you can, increase your net worth in a different way? And, why is it that you do these things with your business? Like, that is how we all get better. That's how we've always gotten better over millennia is by talking about what works and what doesn't work. But yet we find these 2 or 3 things that we're like, no, nobody can talk about those. Like those are taboo. Like, how are we supposed to how are our kids supposed to be better than us if we don't do that, you know? No.
And that's the crux. Like you want your kids to be a better version of yourself. But, you know, with that sort of stuff, Adam, like what I've found, so like Go Abundance, for example, is everyone wants to improve.
Yeah.
So everyone's happy. Like everyone's like, you know, for me anyway, I can speak. I've got the mentality where, all right, this group of people here knows how to do certain things better than I do. And I'm open and receptive to their opinions, to their suggestions, and, you know, I'll make an informed decision on whether I change tack or whatever. Mm-hmm. Whereas you have people that are, you know, again, like you said, you grew up and you traveled, and then there's people in your hometown that never gone away. And that's the thing, like people are so sheltered, they've only seen one perspective, that when someone else shares their perspective, they feel like that's wrong, you know, that the other person should feel and think the same way that they do. And so they try and bring the other person to their perspective instead of being like, that's cool, that's works for you, you know, I respect that. And that's what people ought to have those conversations, because people think, if I bring something up, someone's going to argue with me, and, you know, but they're not seeing my point and this and that. But if you're at a place where you're receptive and you're comfortable with however you're living life, but you're receptive to improvement and open to suggestions and stuff, you won't be debating about, hey, my way is better than yours. You'll be going, oh yeah, I see that. That's how you do things. Cool. Yeah. And, you know, I might take some of that and use it in my own life. But that, you just have to accept that you're not going to get that from everyone. There's only people
ain't that the truth?
That are, and then there's people that are just permanently in this victim mentality where, you know, they're never grateful for what life's thrown at them and what they've done with it. They're always looking at, that person has that and I don't. And, you know, and so they spend their life looking for excuses and complaining. Whereas you have people like us, which will instead look for opportunities. Yeah. And when you look for opportunities, guess what? You're probably going to do better at life. It's just a different perspective. So, you know, when you said you gave your au pairs those books and stuff, we've done stuff like that too. Like you know, when I've read something, I go, man, this is amazing. Everyone should be reading this, you know, and you give that to people. And I'm like, did you read that? Nah. Didn't have time. Yeah. And it's like, okay. Yeah. Well, I stopped doing that after that. And if someone asks, I'll tell them. And I was like, go buy this book and it'll tell you how to do stuff. Yeah. Do they buy the book? Probably not.
Yeah. I was commenting on a buddy of mine. He had a Facebook post recently. It was a quote from somebody else talking about how billionaires are built off of the backs of all of these people who will never become billionaires. And I'm thinking about, well, that billionaire, first off, employed a ridiculous amount of people, right? And had the mindset and drive to be able to do that and actually read those books and implement the things that are going on, where most of those employees will never pick up that book, will never read those things, will never have that drive to be able to do that. But yet they could still earn a living off of this person's drive and ability to do these things, right? And they live in that victimhood. A lot of people, that's not everybody, it's a generalization, but a lot of people live in that victimhood mentality, especially right now, like you said. I mean, everybody's looking for how they can be a victim in one way, shape, or form. And if that's all you're looking for, you will find it around every corner. If you're looking for somewhere that you're doing something wrong, or that the world is out to get you, you will find it around every corner. It's that what's it called, I can't remember the name of it, but it's basically like you buy a red Corvette, and now all of a sudden you see red Corvettes everywhere. Yeah, right? I know what you're talking about. And it's like, if you're looking for it, you're going to see it, because now your brain is open to seeing it. I've got something on up here. It says the 3 monsters. Don't feed the monsters: resistance, distraction, and victimhood. Right? Don't always be resistant to everything that comes around. Don't be distracted by things that you shouldn't be distracted by, and never be a victim. Right? You never have to be a victim. I wish that more people thought that way and you know, change their brain in that fashion. But it's become almost cool to be a victim nowadays. You know, if you're not a victim of one sort or another, then really, I mean, you're a part of the class that is victimizing other people. And it's like, well, correct. You know, like I'm really screwed because I'm a cis white male that owns businesses. So I'm like ultra screwed on like putting people down. So that's dreadful.
And that sort of bias is what, you know, there's obviously the politics and religion, like people kind of separating themselves. But then when you come to money, like most people see money as evil, right? Like there's this thing that, and I'm like, no, it's just a tool. It's just a tool, right? Like you're just using the right tool for the right job. That's all it is. Like there's no emotions attached with money. And it's the same like going the other way where people kind of, the people that see it as evil, similar kind of people see it as, oh, if I have more of that, I'll be happy. You know, like I just gotta keep stacking up. But again, that's not what it is. To me, like freedom's probably more important, right? Like, and money is just a tool to get me freedom. So you kind of, if you think of it from that perspective, it changes things. But yeah, like, I don't know, the victim mentality, I don't know whether it's a nature thing, whether it's a nurture thing or what, but you kind of, at some point, you just give up on those people because you've got the potential, but you're kind of in here holding yourself back.
And I think coming from you is extremely valuable to hear too, because you came from a spot where you were quite literally a victim, right? And you were able to come out of that mentality and push through. And it should be inspiration for people to hear that sort of thing. And I really hope it is, that if anybody's listening, that they came from that, or they have a dad that's doing those things or whatever. Like there is light at the end of that tunnel, like you said earlier, and you can push through it. You don't have to. The way I try to look at it is, you could be victimized without being a victim, right? Like you don't like being a victim is something you hold on to. But it's also something you can let go. So you could have been victimized, and you can move on, and you can move forward. We've all been victimized in one way, shape, or form, but it doesn't mean you have to hold on to being a victim. And I want to teach my kids that.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that. Like I actually am quite grateful for my childhood being the way it was. Like I choose to look at it that way because it's made me quite resilient. It's made me, I've got this bias in my head because whatever life throws at me now isn't as bad as what I've already overcome a lot of things, right? Yeah. So it's like a walk in the park now. So, and if I didn't have that childhood, I probably wouldn't be as successful as I am in my career. Like, let's be honest, they're linked. Like I said, although it started through a bad thing, that's what gave me my ambition or my drive or whatever. Like, even though I was running away, if I didn't have that now in my mid-30s, I wouldn't be at a point in my life where I can say, I'm doing well financially, I'm going to shut my business down and hang out with my kids. I wouldn't be able to do that. I would have been in that cycle where, I'm a drug addict or whatever because I'm going, woe me, like I shouldn't have, I was unfair. Life just is the way it is, and that's the harsh truth. So you either look for opportunities and you try to improve and become stronger, or you're stuck with that mentality. That's why, like, I didn't become a drug addict because I was like, no, why would I do that to myself? That's not helping anyone. I'd rather go and get a job. Like, there's plenty of jobs out there, right? So you can't perpetually be in this thing where my life was bad, so it's just always going to stay there. It's not. You can look at, all right, if it's not good enough here, I can move. Or, you always have a choice. You're never stuck anywhere.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and one thing that matches that is something that I've said a lot is failure is an event, not a person, right? So even if you feel like you're stuck somewhere, right, or if you failed at something and now you're never going to be able to succeed again at it, like you failed at something. It doesn't mean you are a failure, right? Like, you've been victimized by something. It doesn't mean you are a victim. Like, it's time to pick up, move on, find somebody who can help, find a job that will get you where you want to go, get that side hustle that's going to help you do something, become the better example. For, even if you're listening right now and you don't have any kids, but you're thinking about having kids or whatever, like, how can you be a good example for your kids by fixing yourself now so that when you do have kids, you're better off? How do we always be striving to be 1% better, which is what I tell my kids. 1% better every day is all I'm asking for, because you're trying to improve, and that's all I care about. But I think that it's an opportunity to show your children kind of what it's like to push yourself through and pick yourself up by your bootstraps, as the saying goes. So I'm going to change gears a tiny bit and go back to, so you're going to be shutting the business down, traveling a little bit, doing all the stuff. So are you going to be just keeping the real estate that you have already and just using that to fund all of this? Or are you planning to buy some more real estate while you wind down the business? What's your plan to continue growing?
So we've got index funds as well, like low cost index funds. And, there's always like property guys don't want to go down that track. We've kind of diversified into both because with index funds, it's so simple that people think that doesn't work. It's literally just like boring stuff, man. Like, and I hate it because the numbers for us anyway, like we don't have like, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and stuff like that here. Like the way you invest in property is a lot different to how you invest in the States. So when you're doing your sums, you kind of compare, something that's super low effort, easy, like index funds for us here anyway, compared to a somewhat active investment in property and upkeep and things like that. And like that over the long term just comes out a lot better. So in the interim, so I'm still coaching and I do about like 8 hours a week off that. And the way we structured our exit out of the company is the retained profits will be paid out over the next 2-3 years. And, nice. So we've kind of minimized tax and things like that. But I don't have to do anything at all for the next 3 years, but I really, really enjoy coaching. So there is some income coming from there as well, which again, like that will just come in and go into our investment. So we're looking at selling our property actually and going into temporarily just back into our index funds. Or I'm looking at so I know you do equity stuff. So I've got a couple of mates that do similar sort of stuff, but commercial properties. So I'm looking at doing like a 5 to 7 year investment into a commercial investment and see how that turns out, sort of thing, just to diversify. And we don't need access to our liquidity for at least another 5 years. So I can do things like that and go, that's all cool, sort of thing. And yeah, in the meantime, like I said, I want low effort. So I don't want tenanted properties that I have to deal with while I'm in a different continent. So I'd rather just put it into index funds and just forget about it for now. Nice. And again, like, it's one of those things like, I understand that the returns aren't as good as if I did something actively, but that's the point. I don't want to be active. I want it to be a passive thing for the next 5 years. I can always be active. Like I'm 34 years old, right? So to me, losing 5 years in my 30s isn't a big deal. Like thankfully, compound interest is now just going to keep working away from me anyway. So it's not that I'm going to go backwards. We're not going to dig into our savings and lose out, sort of. And so 5 years on, we'll be in a better position, and I'll in fact have access to more liquidity that I can then utilize to do whatever I want. And then it will be what's a good investment at the time, 5 years from now, which may be different to what it is now. As you know yourself, like it's never, I don't see like a 40-year span of like a career sort of thing. Like I'll do whatever needs to be done from a 5-year perspective because things change.
Yeah, for sure. Are you thinking about opening another business again in those 5 years, or really just have no idea? Just kind of let's play it by ear when we get there.
Mate, like, our business is just wrapping up. Like by the end of this month is when it'll be fully done. Like we've got a couple last projects finishing up. But because we decided like 6 months ago, I went through like this mental thing where it's like, oh no, that's going. I have to do something else. And I kept going away from like the plan being to do nothing. So, I was evaluating buying, like I nearly impulse bought a block of units, multifamily units and things like that. Like, and Michelle's like, we just said we're not going to do this. And I was like, I know, but it's an opportunity, because you just geared that way to just look for opportunity, and something pops up. You go, you kind of get FOMO at the end of the day. Yeah. But it was just, again, tenants, right? We don't want tenants. Like, it's a good investment. We don't want tenants. Get away from it. So the next 5 years, it may just be, like I said, putting it into those commercial investments and stuff like that, like into people that will manage investments instead of me actively doing it. And again, I know not as high as a return, but I don't want the activity. And then 5 years from now, like the options are quite endless. Like I said, I've got the highest grade GC license. I could basically build multifamily units ourselves and sell them, keep some of them or whatever we want to do. But I put this challenge upon myself to find opportunities that are completely unrelated to my career so far. because I want to try and build on the muscle to just look for business ventures outside of my area of specialty to see what else is out there. Because it's kind of like a competence thing. I know what I know. I don't know what I don't know.
Yep.
So I want to try and learn something that's a completely different industry and how they do things. Like with tech and AI coming through, like the construction industry is usually the last one to kind of take stuff on board. We're pretty slow with that sort of stuff. So I'd like to venture more into that side and see what's out there. But, it's again, just being receptive. I'm open to new things coming by. I'm open to learning new things as well, and seeing what we can make of it. Like, I know in our 40s, Michelle and I will have some sort of business again. It's just the way we're wired. And, once the kids start school, what are we going to do? Like, we're going to have a lot more spare time. So, and it'll definitely be a business. Like we won't make good employees anymore.
You sound like you're going to want to open a business. Yeah.
And it's, and I've kind of looked at small businesses, buying and flipping small businesses. So like buying them off people that are retiring, fixing them and selling them to investors and packaging them and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's again, the freedom when you've got passive income coming in, you can kind of pursue something that you want. Nice. That, you can learn something from as well, not just become stagnated and do the same thing. Like I wouldn't want to start a GC business again doing the exact same thing we did now, because I feel like that chapter's closed. So I want to do something new.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah. So as far as the passive stuff goes, do you know Shane, I think his last name is Stokes, in GoBundance? He's another Australian guy.
Shane?
But Shane. He lives in Florida. So while you're here in Florida, you should try to link up with him. But he does a lot of passive investing stuff, and runs kind of the passive investing micro tribe within GoBundance. So I'd reach out to him if I were you and kind of say, hey, I'm looking at other passive investments to do different things. But they love to pick apart different businesses and different opportunities that pop up inside of GoBundance and outside of GoBundance, and they'll help vet them with each other and learn about it all. So he would definitely be somebody I'd recommend you reach out to. And you'll like his accent. But I love that you've set yourself up in a way that you seem like you're living life very intentionally at this point and really trying to, to me, intentionality is key. It's one of the reasons I left the military before I even retired. I was really close to retirement and just left. And it was like, I needed to be intentional about what I was doing, which was impossible to do when I was being told where to go and when to be there and how long I needed to be gone. So, I love that you're extremely intentional with it and you're, dedicated to the family and wanting to travel and do all this stuff. I mean, it's, you've set yourself up very well, and I'm impressed, excited. I'm sure I'm thrilled. Hopefully while you're in Florida, I live in Florida, so if I can have an opportunity, I'd love to try to meet up with you while you're here. But,
definitely.
But that's awesome.
I appreciate it, man. It's like I said, learning new things. So at the moment, like with the intentionality, it's about learning how to be a better father and a better husband. So I used to read business books all the time, or self-help books or whatever. Now I'm reading like parenting books and how to help my kids, even when they're teenagers. Like there's a lot of stuff you can do when these kids are very young to ensure that they're healthy adolescents or teenagers or whatever down the track. So, it's sort of, I've always had like a long-term mentality. Like anything I do today, how does that help me or people around me 10, 15, 20 years from now? That's always been my thing. So I'll just stay on that. And it's kind of, I can tell you like compared to 18 years ago, it's it does work out in the long term. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. There's one book that I read. I can't remember anything specifically about it, but I remember that I liked it. It was called Dad, Tired and Loving It. And it was just talking about all the things that you do as a dad and how it's exhausting, but you love every second of it, and it's, like even the hurtful moments, the times that, I'm sitting with my wife and there's, we're coming to tears about one thing or another, or one struggle that we're having, or, whatever it is, like when you look back on it and go, man, it was just a lot of fun just going through that with my son. Like there was one time in in Bali. We were traveling and we were out in Bali, and my son was just literally just started choking on a bunch of chicken. Like he took this big bite of chicken. I had like 104 fever. We're on vacation. I'm laying out on this thing. And all of a sudden my son just like starts choking on this chicken. Just zero breathing, zero anything, completely gone. So I'm like smashing on his back. Finally get all this chicken to come out. My wife freaks out. I freak out for a minute. He starts breathing again. And he's like, okay, I'm good. Starts eating his chicken again with this big blob of chicken and slobber on the ground. And, I was miserable in that moment, like just laying there, just absolutely miserable. Like I'm not enjoying this vacation at all. I'm supposed to be having fun. But then you look back on it later and you're like, man, we made the best of it. The boys loved it. They loved bouncing around on these things. Like, we had these fun stories about my son almost dying on the side of the pool. Like, it's just like, man, like no matter what, it's always exhausting, but it's always fun, and it's always been worth it. Every moment of it has been worth it. I've been struggling a lot with a bunch of different things, which I think that's normal. But again, it goes to that what we talked about before about being willing to talk to people about where you're struggling. And I'm not the first person to have an 8-year-old son, so why don't I go talk to some others who have done a good job of being dads to 8-year-old sons and go learn something.
And it's hard, man. Like, it's not easy being a parent, right? And I'll give you an example. Like I listened to your podcast with your father, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't have that relationship with my dad. And I looked at that going, I hope that one day I have this sort of relationship with my kids where we can converse and have that sort of stuff. And it made me realize that I don't have a compass or like a blueprint of what to do as a father, right? And that's why I'm looking at reading books and educating myself and stuff like that. But part of that as well is obviously when you're struggling or when I'm struggling with something, I need to talk to my friends or my father-in-law or other people that have had kids so I can find out what to do. Again, if I'm realizing if I kept the same mentality or I just keep it to myself, probably not gonna end well in the long term. Yeah. Right. So I'm a big proponent of people just opening up conversations about what they're struggling with. And I don't really see it as a weakness or whatever. It's just that, hey, there's this thing that's an issue for me. I don't know what the solution is. What have you guys done? And then you learn to be better.
Yep. Much agreed. All right. I think sounds like a great place to stop, sticking out with each other, pushing each other through, being open, honest. I mean, this was a fantastic conversation. I'm really, really glad that you jumped on. It was fun fun and sad and exciting to kind of hear your story going through all the stuff. I mean, I can't imagine somebody's going to listen to this and not getting something out of it. Like, but it was, I am, how do I want to word it? Like, incredibly proud to see kind of where you've come and what you've done, like hearing your story. It was, man, I really look forward to meeting you in person and being able to shake your hand. And it was, I want to congratulate you on a job well done thus far. Keep up that thought process, that hard work, that drive, and please reach out if you ever have questions about being a dad. It's different stages, different things. I love this stuff, so I'm happy to help wherever I can. But if somebody wants to reach out to you, wants to get a hold of you or anything, what's the best place to be able to do that?
I'll just go off Facebook again.
Okay.
I'm not really, just after I joined GoBundance, but I'm not really a social media guy. Like, I don't have it on my phone or whatever. But, it's probably, if you Google my name or go on Facebook and search my name, that's probably the best way. Or, like I said, I do construction business coaching for a firm called the Construction Leading Edge. So if you go on that website, you can shoot me a message through that. And that's been like, it's funny, like with working with other construction business owners, a lot of the drive, again, for them is create freedom out of their businesses so they can spend time with their families. It's, it's the same thing. Like, the pattern is very similar. People aren't trying to like turn their businesses into this thing that's going to, I don't know, give them fancy cars or whatever. Like, they just literally want the business going well so that it supports all the employees, the clients, blah, blah, but also so they can have time with their families. So most people's goals are just freedom at the end of the day.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Cool.
Well, I hope somebody reaches out to you. If I know anybody that's looking for a coach on that front, I'll definitely have them reach out to you. Thank you again very much for jumping on. It was a pleasure to chat with you. If you stick around for a second, I'll end the recording, but we'll wrap it up on the other side. But thank you everybody for listening. Hopefully a bunch of you by this point. Hopefully I've got a bunch of people listening. But thank you again very much. Thank you for everybody for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, mate.